Good argument. Honestly, ये argument बहुत चलता है INSEAD में भी and INSEAD आने से पहले भी. Every batch has an internship that comes along with it. September batch does not have an internship.
Do just what you want.
So hey guys, finally one of the most requested video about MBA and NCR, which is like top 5 business schools all over the world, and it has one of the biggest student community all over the world as well, and why you should choose studying in France over studying in US. But first, this video is sponsored by WeBull, one of the biggest and one of the strongest student community on the internet. And if you're a student, you really need this app because it pretty much covers everything from getting scholarships to participating in extracurricular activities to landing your first job, getting internships in your first year. So if you are a student, it will cover everything. And by the way, Abhinav is also on this platform who got 100% scholarship at Stanford as well. And upon COVID, they are running a program called #BetterTogether, which keeps you motivated and keeps you inspiring and helps you win up to $25,000 cash prizes. And for this week, they have a program on equality. And if you will post a 60-second video on what equality means to you, then you will be given an opportunity to donate $500 to your favorite community. And if you will use the hashtag #SingInUSA, you can tag me on it, and you can even find me on GoodWall as well. So if you will tag me, you will be able to get comments from me as well as from the GoodWall community, and definitely I'll be liking your post as well. So definitely try it out to start your student journey now, and the link to Android and iOS apps will be in the description below. So hi Vinay, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi Hanu, nice to meet you and thanks for having me here today. So my name is Vinay Suri. I'm an Indian. Most of my childhood I grew up in Bangalore, Delhi and Bombay. पापा का transferable job था बैंक में. So we kept moving places every 3 to 5 years. So some of my, right till 12th, we kept moving places, and uske baad I went to NIT Kurukshetra for my undergrad. Had an awesome 4 years, like all of us do in our undergrads. And then from there, went on to work with IBM for a year. During that time, जो होता है ना कि CAT करना है, MBA करना है, already वो था, and CAT में हुआ नहीं, and then I made it to IIFT, did a focused international business for 2 years there, learned a lot, and then got recruited by a firm called ADM in Europe. So I was like, okay, let me pack my bags and head to Switzerland for a few years. And then I also moved to London, had a great time in Europe for about 3 years, learned a lot there as well. And then eventually, once the rotation program for ADM was complete, I came back to India. I was getting a little bored and monotonous at the job. So I wanted to do something more strategic. So I then picked up a job offer from Accenture in their strategy team. But while these things were happening, in the back of my mind, I always had, I like the idea of doing an international MBA, studying abroad. So Europe gave me that exposure. And, GMAT happened, got an admit from INSEAD. And then, after INSEAD, I came back to Accenture, took a transfer to the US. And here I am in San Francisco now, pretty much working on strategy assignments here. So yeah, really, that's a brief of my story.
Wow, that's an amazing journey. But at what point of time आपको लगा कि you should even go for an MBA? Like, were you not happy with the job, and what was the biggest reason?
The biggest reason I would say, Hanur, I think I wanted to get that exposure across geographies, right? I went to Europe, and the trigger point for me was I met a lot of people in INSEAD and London Business School at work. And I could see that, the kind of work they were doing at a strategic level for their companies and the kind of exposure they've had in their MBA to different kind of students and professors, it was just amazing and to look at and hear about, right? So overall, I was like, I want an experience like that where, you sit in a class and you have discussions where there are people from, 80 plus countries, 20 plus industries, and imagine a class where everyone's exchanging that kind of views with each other, right? It's a really rich discussion to have, and really, I cherish that experience forever, honestly. So really, those were the trigger points: meeting people and understanding that I want to do an MBA.
But आपने US क्यों नहीं choose किया, and why you chose France?
So I think that's a really good question, Harnoor. I think firstly, there's no correct or wrong choice here, right? It's a personal aspiration. So US का ऐसा है कि already INSEAD से पहले I already had about 6 years of experience. ठीक है? तो मेरा ये बहुत ही focused approach था कि यार I want to do 1-year courses. I want to get back to the workforce again quickly. So, and when I looked at a lot of US business schools like Harvard, Stanford, Wharton as well, they have 2-year courses. They are amazing schools. There's no doubt they're really the best in the world. but I wasn't ready for a 2-year course again. So that's the reason why I was like, एक तो मुझे 1 साल का course करना है, and दूसरी बात ये है with INSEAD, you have campuses all across, you have a campus in France, you have a campus in Singapore, they have a campus in Abu Dhabi, and they've opened now in San Francisco as well. But when I went, so what was really fascinating to me was they have alums all across the world, literally across 100 plus countries. And you get placed in, say, Asia Pacific, Middle East, Europe. So for me, the motivation was that, okay, if not the US, I also have other options around me, right? So that is another motivation, right? So again, if I had to summarize, it's really the duration of the course. Number one, wanted a shorter course. Number two, really looking at job opportunities across the globe and not just the US. So really, I think both those factors played a big role in my decision making.
But I really want to argue, because when I look into MBA, when I look into my journey, I think कि जब आप CEO या CFO बन जाते हो, right? आपको job online कोई दिखती थोड़ी है. There's a job opening for CEO, there's job opening for CFO. I think in that case, connections matter the most. But US में जब आप you go to these Harvard, Wharton, आपके जो connections बनते हैं, I've heard that they are helping more in later 20-30 years. तो NCERT में भी वो बात मिल पाती है, क्योंकि जब आप 2 साल रहते हो ना, so when you're spending 24 months with each other, वो जो bonding, वो connection थोड़ा better बन पाता है, so that you can reach them out when you become at that C level.
Good argument. Honestly, ये argument बहुत चलता है NCERT में भी and NCERT आने से पहले भी. So you are absolutely hitting the right question. अब बात यह है कि यार absolutely, some people like to spend 24 months, especially career switchers, people who want to switch industries, right? And people who are, who want to network closely for 2 years, absolutely. Totally agree with you. But I must say that even in 10 months, 1-year courses, because you have that shorter time, people make it a point कि यार network, you need to make friends, you need to network, you need to know your batchmates. So all that happens. And the connections are strong, absolutely strong. I would say, even if you look at something like if I pick up phone or even text an alum in NCERT and ask for help, I would get a reply very quickly. It's not, even if I don't know someone, and I'm sure a lot of good B schools, that's a big plus for many of the big B schools, not just NCERT, right? And it's very hard to compare and say 30 years के बाद maybe हमारे bond जो Harvard में थे वो ज़्यादा strong थे because I did a 2-year course as compared to one. थोड़ा सा वो मुश्किल है to conclude. I would say the bonds are equally strong in both places. The advantage of doing a 2-year MBA is, yes, you get more time to really pick and choose what industry you want to work in after your MBA. How to you may take a little more time to network. You may want to spend a little more time on your academics, for that matter, right? So honestly, that's really the advantage of having a 2-year MBA was a 1 year. So, but fair point. जो आप कह रहे हो वो उसको मैं completely discard तो कर ही नहीं सकता.
Excellent. Now the most important question, cost of MBA, because US में हर एक को पता है 1.5 crore mark is really difficult to afford. तो आपको scholarships मिलती हैं, and how much is the cost of MBA in France?
Okay, so INSEAD का MBA generally, as far as I know, abhi it's at $105,000 for the 1 year, just the course fee. And again, if you have to convert that to Indian rupees, तो आप कह रहे हो कि almost around 85 lakhs के आसपास होगा, 80-85 lakh rupees. And then add another $25,000-$30,000 for your living expenses, depending on which campus you go to, whether you go to France, Singapore, combination of both, or even more campuses, right? So that's another aspect of expenses. जो आपने scholarship की बात की, right? That's a very important point. I think there are 2 ways to get scholarships, right, for INSEAD. One is you actually get scholarships by applying to the institute itself, where they have like multiple scholarship funds, and then you'll have to submit scholarship essays for those along with your admission essays. Very similar probably to many other B schools. However, I mean, the average scholarship that I've seen that many of the INSEAD students get, including Indians, is about $15,000 to $20,000. That's the typical I've seen. Apart from that, I think this is one way of getting scholarships. However, the second way, Hannoor, which many of you, many of the undergrad students may not be aware, is actually getting sponsored by your employer. So the thing is, there are many strategy consulting firms like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Accenture, A.T. Kearney, which actually sponsor your MBAs. That is, if you're an employee of these companies, right? and then you decide to do an MBA, and you got an offer from, say, Wharton, INSEAD, or LBS, etc. You can go to your companies, apply for the MBA scholarship program that they have. They would sponsor your MBA, which means they pay for your fees, and they would expect you to return to the company for generally on an average for a period of 2 years at least. And then, that's how many of these, that's how even I actually leveraged that process at Accenture. And, as soon as I got my offer at INSEAD, I would go back to them and tell them about it, and got picked by their MBA scholarship program. So, wo ek method hai, right? And then it would be interesting for many of the undergrad students or even other people who've just started on jobs. If they're slightly inclined towards strategy consulting firms, they should look at these companies and then, work there for a couple of years, try for your MBA there, get an offer for your accept from an MBA school, and then go and try, getting sponsored. Then you can really avoid the 1.5 crores mark that you were talking about, whether it's US or Europe.
Absolutely. If you don't find a sponsor, या आपकी company आपको sponsor नहीं करती, you definitely have the option to reach out to Prodigy Finance, which can cover 100% of your MBA degree, up to 100%.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're so right, Harnoor. I know a lot of students at INSEAD who actually would take loans from Prodigy Finance. So that's absolutely a big option that's out there for the students.
Yep. So overall, I think the scholarship criteria is same. If you stand out in the crowd, number one. Number two, if your essays for scholarships are best, in US हो, LBS हो, NCERT हो, कहीं पे भी आपको scholarship मिल सकती है. And एक और important point होता है, वो हर एक को पता नहीं होता, international exposure and different जगह काम करना हो. जैसे कि you're going into leadership, you really need leadership experience along with your software engineering or engineering related experience. तो वो बहुत important होता है. So what do you think कि आपने international exposure कैसे दिखाया, and what tip you will give to other students to show international exposure in their profile?
Sure. Okay. So firstly, that's a very good point. International exposure absolutely helps at B schools like INSEAD. But I also want to give a caveat there, saying that international exposure is not mandatory, right? It's highly valued, but it's not mandatory. I want to show international exposure not by just saying that I worked 6 months in these countries, but actually focusing on aspects such as, really impactful work, number one. Number two, how have you adjusted and led your teams, which are diverse in nature, right? And then number three, of course, like if you have other extracurriculars to show outside of work, internationally or within your own country, that's absolutely appreciated. But again, it needs to stand out a little bit, right? So again, अनु मेरा ये point है कि कोई भी चीज सिर्फ MBA application के लिए मत करो. Passionate हो किसी चीज के लिए, वो खुद से ही reflect हो जाएगा MBA application में. So that's how I would put it in terms of international exposure or anything that you want to show in your essays.
Now, the big question now, whenever someone is going to apply for NCERT or apply to NCERT, they will see that they have listed कि you need to show 3 languages in the application. Number 1, English हो गया. Number 2, second language. Number 3, third language, and it should not be your native language. तो आपने कौन सी languages show की, and how to prepare for that?
So basically, very good question again. Good research, Harnoor, I must say. Firstly, I think English, obviously, most of us would, cross that barrier, hopefully. And then, you need to show an entry language, right? So that can be, again, your mother tongue, right? It could be it could as well be Hindi, Punjabi, Tamil, Telugu, whatever, right? And that should not be a problem. When it comes to exit language, the third language that you're talking about, you could choose among many languages out there: French, German, Italian, Spanish, whatever, Mandarin. Now, one thing one must realize, I hear this a lot of times, that people, when they apply to INSEAD, they are a little reluctant, thinking, यार इतने language skills तो मेरे पास है नहीं, तो मैं कैसे apply करूँ और मैं graduate भी कैसे करूँगा? Firstly, I haven't seen anyone who did not get their degree because they didn't clear the third language at INSEAD. ठीक है? तो ऐसा नहीं है. So basic, even if you choose something like French, German and all, there are enough resources out there to help you prepare for those language exams, and also they give you classes there, right? And ऐसा नहीं कि they're expecting you to become an advanced level speaker कि जाके French में बात कर लिया बाहर आराम से converse कर लिया. They expect you to have like A2 type levels generally, and it's easily doable. So people generally have that strategy कि French, German, Spanish, Italian, in सब में से कोई भी pick कर लो. I've seen a lot of people pick French because you are in the country, so it's best to learn that language. However, many people also pick Spanish, considering that it's a very well spoken, very across the world. It's highly used. so वो भी use किया जाता है. And some of the Indians also use showing a mother tongue apart from Hindi, and then the third language as Hindi or Urdu. That may also work in some cases. So all these things basically work for your entry exit. But overall मेरा यही कहना है कि application, don't get scared of applying to INSEAD because there is these language constraints. As I said, it's fun learning those languages during the course, and at the end of the day you're learning something, right? It's a new skill you're adding to your resume or CV or to your personal life. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So language is not a barrier. Is that कि आपको जाके सीख सकते हो, आपको पहले सीखने की जरूरत नहीं है if you want to learn the French, Spanish वगैरह.
Correct. I mean, पहले सीखना है, सीख सकते हो. मैंने भी try किया. Honestly, I tried to learn, but I must say कि sometimes when you go, when you learn here academically in India and then you go to France, you'll see कि यार dialect में भी difference है, right? हमारे जो accents है वो सब बहुत बार it's hard for them to understand when we are speaking in French, right? So it's good if you're doing some due diligence, पहले थोड़ा सा learn करके जा रहे हो, बहुत अच्छी बात है. अगर नहीं कर रहे हो तो भी ज़्यादा fight नहीं है. That's what I wanted to say, that you can easily pick it up, and it's so much fun to actually be studying these languages in groups with your classmates. It increases your bond as well. You imagine speaking French with each other, two people who don't know, and there's one French native person trying to teach both of them. Right? It's so much fun watching that whole conversation. Everyone's having a nice laugh. You don't want to miss out on such excellent, beautiful moments in your B school life.
Wow. Excellent. Now let's talk about job opportunities. So NCR में graduate होने के बाद, where do you find the highest package? और कितना easy था आपके लिए job लेना, and how much work permit you get, like 3 years, 2 years, or just like 3 years? आपको US में mostly जैसे Stanford का है, they have converted their MBA to a STEM. So वहाँ पे 3 साल का आपको work permit मिल जाता है. But in other schools, Harvard वहाँ पे 1 ही साल मिलता है. तो आपको कितना मिलता है?
So firstly, I must say कि European schools से आप pass out करते हो तो STEM is not applicable to them, right? US visas are not applicable. So I'll be very honest that when you apply to colleges in Europe or in Asia Pacific, and if your dream is to move to the US and you don't have any kind of work authorization, it's going to be extremely hard to make it. तो ये सोचो आपकी H1B जो process है, right? उसके लिए अगर एक company needs to apply for you when you're based in Europe, they have to put you through the lottery process. There's no guarantee that you will make it through the lottery. So that's why I think it's, they would rather pick someone from the US business schools who are on STEM OPT or have an H1B or they're green cards or citizens already, right? So that's a disadvantage. In my case, specifically, I must say that as I was a sponsored candidate by Accenture, right? I took a transfer from Accenture India to US. And what they did is they would, in that case, I would actually come here on a L1 visa. L1 visa is an intercompany transfer visa, and there are 2 types of L1 visas, L1A and L1B. So if you come on an L1A, you could apply for in the EB1 category for green card, which is a little faster in processing as compared to the L1B and H1B. They apply in the EB2 category for green cards. So your processing time definitely is shorter if you come in L1A. However, these L1 visas, you are tagged to the employer and you can't really shift your companies like how you can in an H1B. So that's the disadvantage. So I would say, yes, agar aapka American dream hai, so it's best to get into a top business school in the US, right? And then easily transition from, say, a Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, etc., to a dream company that you want to work in the US. However, if you're open to options, कि आपको यूरोप में काम करने में मजा आ रहा है, some people might have a dream, right? कि मुझे लंदन में काम करना है या सिंगापुर, दुबई में काम करना है, will be closer to India. Then in that case, you should look at business schools like INSEAD, where when companies like consulting companies or any company comes in to recruit, they give you an option, Harnoor, saying, let us know your top 3 locations across the globe where you are comfortable to work with us. Many of the companies do this. And then you would see like people would have choices all across the globe. Someone would put number 1 as, say, Europe, 2 as, say, Dubai, number 3 as Australia, right? And you have a fair chance of getting recruited in either of these places. So I would say, while US is not an easy market, especially for non-Americans, right? Especially for Indians. But the rest of the world is pretty much open, and you could absolutely get placed anywhere.
Wow. And आपको सिर्फ एक ही disadvantage मिलता है, like when you get a job in Europe, the packages are based on the country. It's like 55,000 euros, I'll say, I guess in London, and Paris में भी इतना ही होता है. Is that true? कि उससे भी ज़्यादा आपको 100K तक पहुंच जाते हो आप, just like in US.
Good question. Again, so I think right after your MBA, you could expect, even if you look at the placement reports, I think you could look at, in London, maybe around 80,000 pounds average salary. And then in Western Europe, you probably are looking at something a little lower, right? That is specific to Europe. Obviously, when you compare it with the US business schools and their reports, right? You look at their reports, you would have the fascinating 150,000 US dollars package, etc. Which is absolutely true. Yeah, you're looking at higher packages here, but you have to then compare the cost of living, etc. That's also an important factor that you should consider in these decisions. Apart from that, yeah, Arnoor, ye bhi dekhoge, if you look at places like Singapore, Dubai, right? Then Dubai's packages are very similar to the US packages. So many people get the 150,000 jo US packages hai na, jo apne Wharton Harvard se bhi hota hai. That same packages will be offered to you in Dubai as well. And Dubai has hardly minimal taxes out there. So imagine, so many people opt for Dubai as well. Many people opt for Singapore, where you might start at average salaries of, based on the placement reports that I see, probably around 140,000 Singapore dollars or so. And then a lot of people flock to Australia as well. So there are these options. Again, it's very hard to compare the salaries from one geography to another without also taking into aspects like cost of living, taxes that you pay, and those kind of things.
The other benefits you get in Europe, आपको 30 days vacation मिलता है. No one can compete with that, right? So
yeah, I personally think the work-life balance can be really good there. जैसे तुमने कहा 30 days vacation, people really value their vacations and their weekend times. Weekdays as well. People value your time, respected. यहाँ पे भी होता है, no doubt. But I'm just saying कि both the places are equally good. Depends on which industry you go into also, right? तो वो सब भी है.
And now the final question, your GMAT score कितना important role play करता है? Like how much you should focus on a GMAT for NCERT or schools in Europe, and why you chose NCERT over LBS? अगर किसी को दोनों में offer मिल जाता है तो कौन सा choose करना चाहिए?
So I think average GMAT जो होता है ना Harnoor, NCERT के लिए it's around 710. It's a little lower than the top US business schools, which generally I think have 730 or so, 720, 730. यहाँ पे, which is good. थोड़ा सा everyone feels कि there's a myth कि Indian students have to get really high GMAT scores, whether in US, Europe, but that's not really true. I had a lot of batchmates, at least when I went, who would have less than 700. Brilliant guys, but they must have had exceptionally good work experience and overall international exposure and all that. So 700 के नीचे भी बहुत सारे students आते हैं, extremely brilliant guys. So if you're around 690 to 730, you should just apply. That's it. I would say that's the best thing to do. Now, I think you asked a question about INSEAD versus LBS. Firstly, I think both are exceptionally good schools. It's hard to go wrong with either of them. Now, let me tell you what my thought process would be in these two schools, right? Firstly, I think, one, you got to consider what do you want to do after your MBA, really, right? The question is, you have so many key sectors out there. You have finance, sales and marketing, consulting, technology. Maybe you want to work with Amazon, Google's, and Facebook, Netflix of the world. And then you want to start your own company, for example, right? So in some में करना क्या है? Obviously, all of us can't have our script completely clear, before we join our MBAs. But in my case, for example, I was kind of clear कि यार मुझे finance में नहीं करना है काम. So I was clear I don't want to work in investment banks or banking or traditional trading firms, etc., hedge funds. So, and I was more inclined towards consulting because I already had a background and I felt more comfortable. So if you look at both the schools, LBS and INSEAD, LBS is very strong in finance. They are also strong in consulting, but they really place a lot of students in London in financial firms. INSEAD is positioned better as a consulting school. It places a lot of people into good consulting firms that I mentioned before. So these are two reputations you have. So I obviously incline more towards the consulting school, which is more like INSEAD. Mm-hmm. But this was not the only factor. The second factor I considered is where do you want to work, really, right? Where do you want to live? after you do your MBA. So that's an important, as I mentioned earlier, right? Again, you want to work maybe in London, Singapore, Dubai, which geography, right? India. In my case, I was like, I'm open to all geographies at that time I was. And I was like, let me try, depending on the kind of offer I get, which industry, I'm open to all geographies. So looking at INSEAD, I felt, okay, this B school has campuses all across. They have alumni all across the globe. Even London Business School does have alums all across the world. But it's more to do with the fact that because it has a campus in Singapore, there's also that whole Asia Pacific angle that you get. I can also get placed in Asia, if not in Europe. So that's another reason. And then number 3, I think the duration of the courses, right? INSEAD is a 10 to 12 month course, whereas London Business School is a 15 to 21 month course. And as I mentioned, I wanted to get back to the workforce as soon as possible. However, again, you had an absolutely spot on argument that someone who wants to spend time and understand industries, learn everything, in detail and network really well and make friends, absolutely go for the 15 to 21 month course, right? Again, it's a personal choice. Finally, I would say the personal connect with an institute. Yeah, जब आप किसी चीज के बारे में पढ़ते हो या किसी से मिलते हो from that institute, if you start connecting with that person or institute, you start feeling, okay, this is somewhere I may want to go. You hear so many stories about the business school. I had heard more honestly about INSEAD because I was in Switzerland and close to France. So that also plays a factor कि आप जब read करते हो, research करते हो in business schools के बारे में, which one is making you feel कि यार यहाँ पढ़ने में मजा आएगा, right? Yeah. So that is the final factor, I think, which really made me think, okay, between INSEAD and LBS, this is how I want to make my decision. However, I must say, again, both schools are amazingly good. Depends on your personal aspirations and what you want to do as such. In सब के ऊपर depend करता है.
Perfect. So now, Vinay, what would be some of the final tips you would like to give out to the prospective students ताकि वो भी decide कर पाए कि NCR या फिर कोई और business school उन्हें choose करना चाहिए?
Sure. I think firstly, INSEAD has a couple of intakes, January intake, September intake. Means 2 batches in a year that go to INSEAD. The January batch has an internship that comes along with it. September batch does not have an internship. So if you are focused on getting, experiencing an internship in a different industry, experimenting with certain roles, etc., apply for the January batch, right? Number 2, languages, as I mentioned, don't get scared, just apply, you will figure it out. Number 3, I would say the GMAT, right? GMAT is only one aspect of your application, right? For any B school, it's not make or break, and you can give GMAT multiple times. So don't really worry about it too much. Focus on your application, especially for INSEAD, on your well-rounded work experience, how you can stand out, international exposure if you have that. So absolutely focus on that. And finally, I would say, MBA is not the only means to job satisfaction or success as such, right? Absolutely explore other courses and interesting jobs out there as well. Who knows? You might find something as interesting as exploring options as with Harvard, Wharton, INSEAD or LBS. So that's really my final tips. Hope that's helpful.
Yes, definitely. So thank you so much, Vinay, for your valuable information. It was a pleasure talking to you. I hope this video adds a lot of value to other MBA prospective students too.
I hope so too, Hannur. I hope it was useful to your viewers. And thank you so much for having me here today.
It was a pleasure.